Good morning. I think I'm live, which is fantastic. I'm just checking to see the live feed. Should be going through. To see the live feed. Should be. Yeah, so we are live. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for taking the time to come along and listen to me this morning. I thought I'd give you the full classroom experience. There are a few slides where the script is quite small, but I've emailed you a copy of the presentation. So those of you who want to play along at home, you're welcome. You're welcome to do that. It is a live recording, so anything could happen. Dr. Wallersteiner could burst in. The one thing that's not going to happen is that I don't have my dogs here, so you won't have to worry about yappy dashhounds. So your time is very, very precious, but at least you don't have to come in here on a Saturday, no matter how long you work in a boarding school. Saturday school always catches you a little bit by surprise. But let's talk about what we're going to see today. So this is basically where we're going to go. I hope everyone's fine, and I've got various screens where I can see comments coming through, so that's great. For those of you who've been through the process before, not much has really changed, but I'll go through all of that. And as I said, this isn't Ask Me Anything on university. I'm going to focus today on the UK system, and the reason for that is that most of you will be going through the university, the UK application process through UCAS. And for those of you who aren't, for those of you who've got children who are making applications to the United States and elsewhere, each one of those is a different application effectively. It's really quite tricky. And they should certainly have already made themselves known to Dr. West and Miss Lucy Dr. Jones. Sorry about that. We will be working with them already, and hopefully their application will be a long way down the line. Other than that, really, the floor is open to any questions at all, apart from events in Oxford between 1988 and 1991. I've already cleared that up with the authorities. They seem to be happy, and so the matter's closed. Good. Let's move on. So this is the official UCAS timeline, and it's going to unfold there in front of you. And you can see where we are and what's going to happen. So this is when the UCAS application system actually goes live. So this opens on, I think that's Tuesday, if I remember correctly. And all of those applications have to be with the universities by January the 15th. Now, every year I get one that goes through on January the 14th or January the 15th. My ambition is to get all of that done. In fact, my ambition is to get all of that done much, much, much earlier. So here we are today. As we said, the system goes live on the 24th, on the 18th, sorry. On the 24th, I am going to sit down with all of the lower sixth virtually, and I'm going to walk them through the administrative aspects of the form, and I want that all done by the 28th. Now, I'm going to bang on relentlessly about this because this is so boring. And yet every year it probably takes more time than anything else that we do. For some reason, just filling in a form seems to present a massive challenge to some of our cohorts. So I really want that done and dusted by the 28th of May. Then we've got Futures Week. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And then on the 19th of November, I want all of these things off our desk and onto the university desk. I'm going to explain how you can help me with that as we go through the thing. There is absolutely nothing to be gained from submitting a late application. And in fact, anecdotal evidence suggests that universities look more kindly on applications that are received earlier in the cycle. Good. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about UCAS. I don't know, some of you may be new to this, and you can see what it is there. Basically, it's a broker, and you put your details into UCAS, and then they send them on to the universities, and they deal with all the administrators. So it's actually quite a good system. A lot of people lining up to have a pop at it, but if you've ever tried applying to university in America, or indeed elsewhere on Europe, UCAS is actually very good, and it gets better every year. That's the other good thing about it. All of the shambles that we had last year, well, that was not their fault. I believe the blame for that lies elsewhere, somewhere in SW1. Anyway, that's UCAS, and they are basically the go-between these 35,000 courses, 350 universities, and your kids. And so, there's a lot of moving parts here. And again, I think they do a very, very good job. It took me a while to work out quite what that was about. But anyway, I thought I'd chuck it up there. If you take one thing away from this particular presentation, if there's one message I really want to get across to you, it's this. What we want from our Stoics, what we want from your children is complete buy-in. We want them to be committed to this process, because if they're committed to this process, then everything flows from that. If they're not really invested in it, then we're constantly pushing water uphill, and nobody wants to do that. And the best thing that you can do at any stage of the process is just, to be on their case. Just ask them the questions. What are you doing? Explain this to me. If you don't understand what they're doing, then get them to explain it to you. And if they can't explain it to you, then obviously we've got a bit of an issue, and that's when I can get involved, or the tutor can get involved, and we can help everyone understand exactly what the process is. But if you're on their case, if you're just asking them and saying, come on, what have you done? Have you done the administrative stuff? Mr. Floyd's going to be on your case. Have you sorted out your choices? That's where you guys can be absolutely invaluable, because we will be on their case, but it helps if you are as well. That's going to make a huge difference, really, for us. And of course, I know that that's not the only thing you do. You drive them around, you take them on the open days, and hopefully we'll have some open days this year. And you take them and you look at them and you help them along the way. That's fantastic. And we really, really appreciate it. We couldn't do it without that element. But the more you can be on their case, the more you can just be asking them, how is it going? Have you finished? Are you up to speed? Do you know what you're doing? That's really what we would dearly like you to be doing for us. Good. Yeah, whatever happened to him. Anyway, let's get on. So what are we looking for? What do we want to get on? Well, the first thing to do is to say, these are the resources that I'm going to be talking about principally today. Really, I'm going to be talking about this one. That is the UCAS Hub. We've also got this other thing called Unifrog, which is incredibly powerful, and your children are all signed up on that already. And then there's these other things. If I went through all of these equally, we'd be here all week. So what I'm going to focus on is the UCAS Hub, because this is where all of the applications go through. The UCAS Hub is where it starts and where it finishes, and so I'm going to focus on that. But also, we've paid for Unifrog. It's really, really good, and these two sites over here are equally good. When I've finished this recording, I'll make sure that all of these are linked off in the description, and you can hopefully follow up on that. Good. Just looking at the color's a bit weird. Never mind. Let's crack on. So, doing the research. Obviously, this year, touch wood, we're going to have the ability to go along and kick the tires at a few of these universities that we simply didn't have last year. In terms of open days, I haven't really talked about those much here. They can be valuable. They can also be an excuse for a jolly. So we try to manage that as best we can. There's so much online nowadays that, to be brutally honest, the real point of going to an open day is somewhat diluted. Yes, it will give you a sort of sense of what's going on, but often you're going to an empty university, and so there's nothing there. I suppose you can look and see what Southampton looks like, how far it is to the Dell, and so on. But all of this stuff is now online, and the universities have shifted a lot of their stuff on there, and so that's really where it all happens. The other point, I suppose, to make about open days, just before we crack on with this, is that we allow students 2 days in term time. That's in an academic year. They're basically allowed to miss 2 days of school to go on an open day. So we do encourage them to try to get as many of those done in the holidays as possible, because obviously the teaching takes priority to wandering around the pubs and bars of York. Right, so doing the research. That's what UCAS Hub is for. UCAS Hub also helps them keep all of their notes in one place. There's a lot of note taking that's going to go on here. There's not lots of moving parts. And so everything there can be done on UCAS Hub, or also in Unifrog. So we've got two potential things there for them to use. Discovery days, there's lots of stuff, and there's all sorts of stuff about open days, so you can find those on there as well. Basically, there's so much information. The difficulty is actually knowing what to zero in on. And again, that's where you can really help them. Right, so what are we looking to do here? What are we hoping to get? Well, in terms of the actual application, this is what you need to know. As I said earlier, everything goes through the UCAS hub. So that goes, well, they can actually register on that now, but that doesn't actually go fully live until Tuesday, but they can certainly be registering on that over the weekend, and I'll be sending them an email telling them to get on that. Now, in that initial search, the students are trying to identify 5 different courses, potentially at 5 different universities. Don't have to be, but normally they are. So we're looking for 5 choices. Now there's some fine print on that. Medicine, if you're applying to medicine or veterinary science or indeed dentistry, then you make 4 applications to medicine or veterinary science or whatever, and then you have your 5th one, which is basically reserve shoot if those don't come off, where you can go off and read biological sciences or something along those lines. And you can't apply to both Oxford and Cambridge. Funnily enough, I thought that had been changed, but now it's back again, so you can't apply to both Oxford and Cambridge. So there you go, that might be relevant. There is a cost involved. We ask that students pay for this themselves, so if you can make sure that they have access to £22 or £26.50 and a card, then we can get that done. You may remember, if you went through this about the same time as I did, that you had to write all of these down, and so your Durham and your Yorks would see, where they were in the pecking order. That doesn't happen now. So each provider can't see where else you've applied, and then this time next year, we'll be looking to the students to narrow that 5 choices down to 2 final choices. One of those would be a firm, the other one would be an insurance choice. And we would advise that there's maybe 2 grades difference between those in case it all goes terribly wrong in the final assessment. So we start with 5, and then in May next year, we narrow that down to 2. And again, normally we would expect to see some distance, some clear water in terms of offers between those two proposals. Okay, so what's in the application? I mentioned this earlier, and I'm sorry if I know I'm boring, but I will bang on about this relentlessly because it's just such a waste of everybody's time. We just want this done and dusted as quickly as possible. And if you could really be on their case about this, I would be ever so grateful. So they have to put in the personal details. I'll talk about that in a bit. There's also their choices, obviously, and again, I'll come into that in more detail. Personal statement, that's the tricky bit, and the school reference, and I like to think that's really where we're rather good. So, personal details. Why does this take so long? I have absolutely no idea, but every year it's the same thing. We have certain protocols in terms of postal address and home address for borders. The postal address always has to be the school. The home address obviously is where they live, and somehow or other that manages to cause massive difficulty. And of course their academic record, both qualifications achieved and qualifications pending, and we'll come back to that in a second. Sorry, I just had a question there on anything that other institutions that to which people might be interested in applying that aren't covered by UCAS. That's a very good question. Conservatoires do actually go through UCAS, but it's a slightly different stream. And art schools generally have art schools, sometimes it's UCAS, sometimes it's independent. Generally speaking, we will always go through UCAS, and then anything that hangs off the back of that, if it's an art school or a music school or a drama school, that will be sort of an individual basis. But most of the stuff will go through UCAS if it's a UK application. But we are able to deal with those that aren't, particularly art school and some music and drama colleges. But yeah, good question. Thank you very much. I hope that's cleared that up. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, we saw earlier that we've got 35,000 courses and change and 350 destinations to go to. That's a bewildering amount of choice. And so sifting through that really is very, very important. You've got to come down to 5 initially and then down to the final 2 that you take on. So yeah, lots of work to do there. Now, again, this is something that we say every year, but every year sometimes it fails to land. We start with the course. Now, every Stoic is very, very interested in going to university. They want to know, whether mates are going to Edinburgh or to Exeter or Newcastle. But really, it should be the course that drives it, because that's what you're going to study. You are going to go to study this course, and you're going to study it for 3 years, and you're going to have to come up with a course that is going to get you out of bed on a cold Wednesday in February. So if you're not on the right course, it really doesn't matter which university you're at. The course has to drive it, and whatever comes after that comes after that. So I've got another question coming through. From the 5 choices, do they all offer odds? Oh, right. Okay. So yes, a couple of good questions coming through there. When it comes to applying with their email address, do not use the school email, use their personal email. That's very, very important because they may get an email when they're on the beach in Thailand, and they're probably not going to open their school address. So yeah, make sure that's the home address, home email address. And from the 5, yeah, so you put out your 5 choices. They may or may not make you an offer. If lots of people apply to Oxford and Cambridge and to Warwick and to the LSE, not all of them get a reply, not all of them get a positive reply. That's why you get 5 choices. And that's why we generally recommend that when you're making that initial list of 5, that you vary your level of university, which I'm coming on to in the next slide, to make sure that you get at least some offers back. Now, every year, we have a large number of students who don't get offers back from all 5 universities, but every year we make sure that everybody gets at least 1 offer back from university, ideally more, in fact, it's generally more. So I hope that answers that particular question. So I should really get my glasses so I can read those questions as they're coming in. So yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, the more competitive the university, the more competitive the university, the more competitive the course, the more likely it is that you may or may not get an offer. It's really bad. I didn't say that at all clear. I do apologize, but I hope it's more or less clear. So let's talk a little bit about the universities. And again, this is normally where the Stoics start. They shouldn't really be starting here, but they tend to. There are a number of questions there, and I think the style and the way in which things are taught will determine obviously what sort of offer the Stoics get back from them. So the type of, so if you're applying to read philosophy or PPE, for instance, at Oxford, then the offer back from that is going to be 3A+. The offer from Huddersfield will be BBB. The offer from York will be 3As or something like that. So you'll probably get a range of offers back depending upon the university to which you apply. And you'll very quickly find that when you start searching through it with the students. Unifrog is where you will find the different grades coming through, the grade expectations, the likely grade expectations from the universities. UCAS just will give you a clear idea of what's on offer. But if you want to find out what grades your university is going to expect, that's where Unifrog comes into its own. Okay, good. So the personal statement. Actually, funnily enough, those who are applying to Oxford and Cambridge should already have started this. Mr. Murnane is massively on this because this is hard. This is the really, really, really difficult bit. It's the hardest thing that a Stoic is probably going to do this year. And I could have picked one from Oxford, Cambridge, or somebody applying to read law. But the key thing is that everybody has to do this. Everybody has to do a personal statement, whether they're applying to read engineering at Oxford, Cambridge, or whether they're applying to read real estate at Oxford Brookes or somewhere else. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to give the reader, the admissions tutor, an insight into how this particular applicant thinks. Now, I was at a conference a while ago, and there was 5 or 6 different admissions institutions up on this table, and the personal statement came up, and the question was, do you read the personal statements? And the first guy went, no, I can't be bothered. We get thousands of these. We look at the grades, we make offers. And then all of these admissions advisors were sitting in the audience going, oh my God, this changes everything. We don't need to worry about this anymore. And the guy sitting next to them said, yeah, we don't read them either. We look at the grades, it's fine. But then, of course, one in the middle says, well, we look at some of them. And then the one at the end said, yeah, we go through all of them with a fine-tooth comb. So the point is that this really, really matters. It'd be great if we could say that it's done. It probably doesn't matter as much as we bang on about, but it might. And so we need to make sure that this is as good as it can possibly be. Now, there comes a point where we have to say, okay, that's good enough, because it's no good if it's still on our files, because we're still tweaking it and advising it and changing it. Sometimes we just have to say, look, this has to go now, because it really needs to go. But yes, these are very, very important. It's the one element really that the student has in their control, and so it really, really matters. We have huge numbers of historical bits of evidence for people to look at. Obviously, you can't copy it because they run it through all sorts of flag scans. And we give them lots of advice on how to do this. You can go and watch my videos. There's a whole playlist on how to write a personal statement. So there's lots and lots of resources out there. But this is quite important. It is very, very hard. You have got to show commitment to all of those things, and you've got to do all of that in 4,000 characters, including spaces, including punctuation, and including return marks. I've got a couple of questions coming through here. Is the Heap Handbook worth getting? No, because it's all online. Skegness, right. Ross group versus non-Ross group. I'll come to that at the end, actually, if that's okay. Yeah, everyone gets very excited about Russell Group, but it's getting increasingly less relevant. What's more important is that you get a good degree rather than where it came from, particularly if you're in one of these more interesting new subjects, creative media or something along those lines. What we really want to make sure you're doing is you're getting a first or 2-1 from good university. Russell Group still has a cachet, but it's much more important, I think, that the student goes to the university that's right for them. Because there's no point going to a Ross Group university, having a miserable time and coming out with a score draw or a third. You know, that's not what you want. You've got to be, 2-1 or better. If Ross Group's not the right place for you, it's not the right place for a lot of students, then it's much better that you go to somewhere that's going to teach you in a way that's going to help. So you get that 2-1 on the first to distinguish yourself from the heat. It's lots of employers out there I know I'm talking to, you get a pile of resumes like that. And the first thing you want to do is to get it down to that size. And the easiest way to do that is to chuck out anyone below a 2-1. And, that's harsh, but you know that you're going to get sufficient good candidates in that particular path. And maybe you lose a couple on the other side, but that's where it goes. So I think, Russell Group, great, but they're not necessarily right for everybody. And it's much more important that we go to a university place that is right. Can they apply to the same university for a different course? Yes, you can. You can. But when it comes to different courses, this is where this gets really, really important. You can only have one personal statement. So if you're applying to University A to read real estate and University B to read philosophy, then this is going to read like a proper dog's dinner. You have to be, you only get one personal statement, and so there's a limit to the extent that you can stretch it to cover different subjects at different universities, or indeed at the same university. You might be able to use a personal statement to apply to read business or finance, and perhaps even economics, but obviously stretching it, between basket weaving and electronic music, that's obviously not going to work. So yeah, you can apply to different universities. You can apply to the same course. There's different courses in the same university, but you only get one personal statement, and that makes things complicated. Okay, the reference. Now this is our bit, and to our own horn here, we're bloody good at this. We're good at this. We get offers back from all of our universities because we know how to write good references, and we've got three offers this year into the LSE. Now, I'm massively proud of our kids. We're going to Oxford and Cambridge. That's fantastic. But arguably getting into the LSE is even harder because you don't have the extra tests. You don't have the interviews. And so applying to the LSE, particularly from private school, let's call an ugly thing by an ugly name, is fantastic because that offer is being made entirely on the strength of the personal statement and our reference. So very, very pleased with that. So I think we write a good reference. Trust us to do that bit, and I think we'll all be happy. And of course, you're more than welcome to see those both the personal statement and the reference, should you so wish. Good. So UCAS grades. Already seen a couple of questions in the chat about this. I mentioned earlier that we have to have the qualifications pending. And I want to say from the absolute get-go, these are not predicted grades. These are not what we expect the client to get. Okay, client, excuse me, going back 30 years. It's not what we expect the applicant to get. When we come up with our UCAS grades, we're basically doing the applicant a massive favor. We're saying this is what's going to happen if all of your stars align. If everything goes right for you, if everything goes according to plan, then we expect you to get this. Now, we have a formula that I'm going to explain that has proven historically surprisingly accurate, and it's also quite effective in terms of what we wanted to do, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But please understand that these are not predictions of outcome. I can't remember who it was who said, I don't make predictions and I never will. But this is a game that we play with the universities. They know that we give this best case scenario, and so they look at it and they decide whether or not they're going to buy into it. Now, historically, UCAS have told us that our UCAS grades are more accurate than the sector average. And I'm very, very pleased with that, because that just means that our applications, when they arrive on the desks, are credible. And we have to think about that credibility. We have to think about that institutional credibility. So if we're sending somebody off with wildly exaggerated UCAS grades, that will filter through the process. That will filter through the institutions, and our applications will be seen as being unreliable. So that is why we have to watch these very carefully. Now, there are a couple of institutions where we simply cannot go above and beyond what we believe to be true, and that is where the sample size is incredibly small and the stakes are incredibly high. So Oxford and Cambridge, obviously. LSE, very definitely, and Imperial College, very much so. Also, medical schools. We have to be very, 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 very careful with the UCAS grades that we are giving students, because if we are making unreliable claims, then the next Stoic who applies to the LSE or Imperial, Oxford, Cambridge medical schools, they're just going to look at that and say, not a chance. So we have to guard the integrity of these very, very carefully. We have more flexibility with other universities, but certainly Oxford, Cambridge medical schools, LSE, Imperial, we have to hold incredibly tight to the line. And this is the line that we've used in the past. Basically, we've got the year-end exams that are coming up, the penultimate week of this term. Not an ideal time, but we're not going through an ideal world at the moment. So we take all of those grades and we bump them up by one, and then we add another one. So that is how we calculate the UCAS grades. Now, we will deviate from that if there's a very, very good reason to do so, but we like this because it obviously gives an incentive to the student to perform in these year-end exams, which is good for intrinsic and extrinsic reasons that I'm sure I don't need to explain here. So let's just have a look at what that might look like in practice. So if they get these grades here, then we would take each of those up by one, add one, not for luck, but add one because that's, again, I have to stress that this is not something that I just pulled out of thin air. I went back and I went through a load of past exam results and actual outcomes, and this is surprisingly accurate. So again, if you're talking to your child over half term, you might want to suggest that they take these exams seriously. I don't want to ruin anybody's summer, and I don't want to put a lot of stress on people who are already stressed, but these exams do matter for, as I said, both intrinsic and extrinsic reasons. Now, obviously, we understand that this year is not like any other. And so I'm trying to work out how best to adapt this to reflect the new reality. However, I'm still going to try to hold to a formula as closely as I can. I'll be talking with my faculty chairs and seeing what we think. We are still going to hold to this formula because it is the fairest way of doing it, and it is obviously the best way of ensuring that our Stoics perform to their best in these exams. And in terms of personal statement, we sweat over them. We work very, very hard with our Stoics, and rest assured that no personal statement goes until it's been thoroughly reviewed by the tutor and by a second party, normally me, but also one of my very experienced UCAS advisors. We have some very, very, very good hands on that. So don't worry, they get a lot of help with their personal statement. Of course, it helps the more they invest in it, but twas ever thus. So we're going to tweak this, but not by much, because I think that the model still holds that success in future exams. Everyone says, "Oh, I'm going to pull out all the stops in the run up to the exams," and yeah, they probably do, but it still tends to hold to this particular formula. It is surprisingly reliable and fair. Good. Right. So I mentioned earlier a little bit about Futures Week. This is coming up after the exams. So when all of the teachers are marking those end of year exams, we are going to be doing this. So we're going to be mixing up a combination of careers advice and university advice. Hopefully at this point, a lot of the application process will be done. We'll be a long way down the line, certainly with that personal admin. But then we're going to do all of this other stuff. And it's not going to be me or my colleague, Dr. West. We're getting some people who really know what they're talking about to come in. And we've got a nice range of universities there who are going to come in and advise on some of the aspects of student life and on how to make a successful application. And then some more stuff coming through there, some very, very good names coming to talk to students about, life, the universe and everything. Within limits, but there we go. So that's Futures Week. That's the last week of term after the exams, and hopefully send them off on the summer vacation with some ideas to follow up on. Right. So things to do. Let's make a list, shall we? And again, the students have all seen this, so we can all be on the same page. So we obviously got to think about choices. Now remember, course drives university. They'll resist that as hard as they can because all of their mates are going to Newcastle, all their mates are going to Exeter. No, it's got to be the course that drives the application. Places come second. I've been through all of the resources. I mentioned Unifrog earlier. It's not just that, we've got more stuff. One of the great things to come out of last year, one of the few good things to come out of the pandemic, was this idea called Ask a Stoic. I phoned up a large number of old Stoics who were at university, who are studying these subjects at these places, and they have put themselves forward to be ambassadors either for their course or their destination. So if you're wondering what life is really like at Bristol or Birmingham or any one of these places, or what it means to read any one of these subjects, there's a Stoic at the end of that line who will be able to give you real-time advice, not someone like me, back in the days before mobile phones and satellite TV and the internet. Right. So that's all out there. I've already mentioned UCAS Hub, so that's a very good resource. And of course, I've mentioned my videos. Clicks means cash. So here we go. I've got lots of videos out there. And we've also got some videos from university advisors as well that are cached on our system, and I'll make sure that they're all available to you all. So I'm trying to see, have I got, I haven't got my one there about the personal statement, but it's out there somewhere. So what else should we be doing? Obviously, we should be revising for these end of year exams. They do matter. We should also be completing the UCAS personal detail. I said I was going to bang on about this. I'm sorry, but it's so boring. Please just encourage your sons and daughters to get that done as quickly as possible so we can just get it out of the way and focus on the much more interesting and challenging stuff on this side of the equation. We're getting towards the end of the presentation now. So just going over the key points again. The UCAS application, we've got those personal details, which is the tedious bit. We've got 5 choices. They have to be writing that personal statement. They should certainly be getting on with that over the summer. And researching courses and destinations. And I promise that's the last time I'm going to mention that. I'm just going to show you this because I showed it to your children the other day when we had our, just before we went on Exeat, so it did say Exeat and half term. You may know that we have just had the mobile testers in, and they ran PCR tests on the entire sixth form and some other groups that we've got here. No positive tests at all, which is amazing. Such good news. You may know we had a couple of cases earlier in the term, but we've absolutely clamped down on those. And when we had the mobile testing units in, we came out completely clean. So that was fantastic news. Obviously, half term is coming up, and I just said to the lower stakes, look, it's not just about you. You might catch COVID and be desperately unlucky, but what we're worried about is the spread. So over half term, we have just said to them, look, be sensible. We know we're hopefully all coming out of lockdown, but we don't want to bring COVID back into the school. I really don't want to bang on about this massively, but I really just wanted to make that point. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. I think I can see some questions coming through. What date are we aiming to have the personal statements completed? Well, the personal statements can only really be finished once all of the choices are done. I would really like all of the sixth form to be coming back after the summer holidays with at least a first draft of that personal statement done. Again, we'll be talking to them about this later in the term. Mr. Murnane is a much less forgiving master, and he wants them to be on the second, or the Oxbridge applicants to be on the second or third draft of their UCAS, of their personal statement by then. But definitely this is something where fortune favors the prepared mind, and the more work they can be doing on it, then the better. But if we say that we want all of these applications out by November exeat, which is kind of where we were aiming for earlier, then definitely personal statements should be well in advance by the end of the summer holidays. And again, your work with that would be incredibly valuable. So everyone needs to get away and have a break, but at the same time, they need to be looking at their personal statements and their choices and so on and so forth, so that we can come back fully fledged and hit the ground running. I'm about to have the lower sixth come in here, but that's fine. It won't hurt them to hear this at all. But things may get loud and bumpy. Let's have a look. Oh, right. Now that's a very, very good question there on work experience. Work experience is always valuable, and the more relevant it is to the course, the more important, or the more valuable it becomes. Hang on a second, let's just let these kids in. Right, people, in we come. We're in the middle of a live broadcast, but if you sit down quietly, we'll all be fine. Right, so come on. So sorry, that was work experience. Work experience is incredibly important in certain areas. If you're looking at engineering, if you're looking at law, if you're looking at journalism, if you're looking at fashion for some reason, do you want to sit? Freddie, just sit. And of course, I think I said medicine. So there are certain courses where that work experience is invaluable. Now, all work experience is useful. The more relevant it is, the better. One of my favorite stories on this was a medical applicant that I met at Cambridge once, and he told me, so at Oxford, and he told, can you be quiet, please? So I'll be with you in a second. And he said that in his application, he said that he was a Sunday league football referee. And they said, well, why are you telling us this? And he said, well, it's very simple. Every Sunday I go out there and I have to make a snap decision. And I know that whatever decision I make, half of the people around me are going to disagree. But I still have to make that decision. So that was a really useful point that he could just fold into that, and that made his application stronger. So any work experience that you can do, any work experience you can bring to the table is going to be valuable. But it can't just be parked there and said, well, I did this. I worked in a bank. Where the real value comes in is when you can take that work experience and fold it into the application, and thereby demonstrate that you are a better candidate than the next man on the bus. So the work experience is good. The more relevant it is, the better. Law, medicine, journalism, engineering, it's pretty much mandatory. So yeah, work experience is always good, but do try to make sure that it's valuable. And you should be able to take anything and make it useful. We tend to find that that's the case. Right, hang on a second. Let's just go through here. Students on D&V, yeah, they'll miss out on Futures Week. That's unfortunate, but again, everything's being recorded. It's one of the few good things to have come out of the death plague. So while they'll be away, they'll be able to catch up on that later. And of course, there's so much experience and wisdom and knowledge in the general staff body that we can cover these questions, generally speaking, as they come up. So that's work experience. When do the kids get the predicted grades as the conditions of their university choice? Well, we will run with that formula. We will run with the formula, perhaps tweaked formula. So once they get their summer exams back, then they'll have a good idea of the sort of grades that we are going to give them in support of their application. So those will be coming out probably the beginning of the summer, and so that should help on that one. I fully understand about the difficulties getting work experience now because the raging death plague. Hopefully that's going to open out, but don't forget the critical thing there is that everybody's in the same position. So everyone is going to be struggling as well. Also, there's quite a few virtual work experience things going on at the minute. We're getting these things pinged into our careers department, and we're sending them out to the lower six as we get them. So there we go. But certainly, as things open up, one will be expecting them to get out on the work experience. In terms of the BTEC, well, because we're not really dealing with there's less of a gap between the grade that's achieved now and the grade that they get in the end. Really, we get a much better idea of where they are. So we can work in some sort of growth in the marks, but there's much less speculation because we know exactly where they are at any given time. Good. I hope that answered that particular question. Good. I'm delighted that this has been helpful. It hasn't gone terribly wrong. There's some people here who look like they want to be educated, and obviously you paid quite highly for that, so I should probably get on with that. But are there any further questions? Oh, EPQ. Thank you for mentioning the EPQ. God, I love the EPQ. The reason why we like the EPQ so much is because it brings something different to the table. Let's face it, that if you're coming up with 4 A levels, really what that proves is that you're good at passing A levels. And the grade will only be on the basis of 3 of those. So basically you've done another subject for no great gain. The EPQ, on the other hand, it demonstrates a different skill set. It only lasts a year, so on and so forth. And what we're seeing is that more and more universities are folding that into their offer. So if you get a good grade in the EPQ, you might see a grade remission elsewhere in that particular offer. So that's the first good thing about the EPQ. The second good thing about the EPQ is it gives you something to write about in your personal statement. So it works both in terms of the grade remission and in terms of content in the actual application itself. Good, great. Well, look, it's been wonderful talking to you all. Any further questions, just ping me an email or give me a call, and I'll answer those as they come through. I do hope to see you all in person sometime before too long. And until then, I wish you all the very best. Stay healthy, stay well, and stay on their case, all right? All of you, you heard that. Your parents are going to be on your case about your UCAS application. So everybody heard that, and there's absolutely no denying it at all. Thank you very, very much. Have a lovely weekend, and see you all very soon. Take care.